Welcome, golf fans, pursuers of knowledge and the almighty dollar. This is your golf guru bringing you the 123rd edition of the U.S. Open being played at the LA Country Club. This is going to be my preview show. We're going to break down the course. We're going to run a bunch of custom stat models. I'm going to give you all the information that I have. Of course, we're going to look at some of the bets that I got going on. Been a little successful here of late. And we'll also recap, of course, that exciting RBC Canadian Open. And with all that said, thanks for stopping by. Give me about 30, 45 minutes. We'll get through all this information and let's go talk a little golf. Okay, so first and foremost, I almost forgot that I do have a giveaway for the US Open. And of course, this is to thank you, the community, for checking me out and also trying to get to 2,000 subscribers. So we're only like 500 subscribers away. And to get into this giveaway, and what is it? Simply, I am giving away 5 winners, $100 randomly. And all you need to do is simply subscribe if you're not a subscriber and tell me in the YouTube comments, who do you think is going to win this US Open that we're looking at? And of course, if you would do me the honor, click that like button. So to summarize real quick, I'm giving away randomly 5 winners, $100 each. And all you need to be is a subscriber to tell me, who do you think is going to win the U.S. Open? And click that like button. And last, if you've already put the entry in or already told me who you think, you don't need to do it again. You are in. Let's go talk a little bit about what transpired at the RBC Canadian Open. Of course, you know, it's funny. This tournament kind of started a little slow for me, even with Nick Taylor, right? He shot, I believe it was 3 over his first day. Did not look good. And then finally, he started to come on and shot, I think it was 5 under. Then maybe 7 under. Then again, yesterday, I think it was somewhere around 4 or 5 under to, of course, get in the playoff with Fleetwood. But, you know, so many things you could sit and analyze from Rory McIlroy again, faltering on Sunday, which, of course, I told you guys I was skipping. I think he ended up like T9, T10, but for his price tag from a DFS perspective, did not work out. And we'll go a little bit into my picks and talk about that. But of course, this is the image of him sinking that eagle putt, I believe, on the 4th playoff hole from 72 feet, literally just trying to get it up close. I think Fleetwood had, you know, I think it was like a 10 to 12 footer to get the birdie. So he mentioned in his presser after, hey, I wasn't trying to make it. I was just trying to get it, you know, really close, put a little pressure on Fleetwood to have to make his. And of course, after like the 2nd playoff hole, the rain started pouring, which you could see there. Also, Nick Taylor was the first Canadian to win this since, I don't know what, 60, 70 years. They talked about that to almost nauseum. But either here or there, it was an amazing tournament. And of course, I also tweeted out that, you know, hey, in my preview show, I showed you guys some of the sicko bets that I had. And one of the ones that I didn't feel were that sicko was Nick Taylor at 60 to 1, and was super excited when I saw like on Saturday that he was going to be in contention. And of course, came out to a great run on Sunday. And watched, you know, very closely all 4 days, but really, you know, Sunday, he got to, I think he bogeyed, what, 15, and then birdied, I believe, 16 and 18, something like that. You know, I felt good that, of course, he went in with the lead and got past Hatton and Eric Cole. But I saw that Fleetwood still had quite a few holes left, the easy holes, right? That those 9s played night and day. The front 9 was quite a bit more difficult. You know, they were naming those 4 holes, 3, 4, 5, and 6, the penalty box. And then the back 9 was giving up quite a few birdies. And when I saw that, I said, well, you know, the odds don't look too great that he's going to win this thing. And so then, of course, Fleetwood birdied 16. He birdied 17. And I'm thinking, no way possible he's not going to birdie 18. He's birdied 18 all 3 days in a row. He's hitting an iron off the tee, into the rough, tries to get out just back into the fairway with another iron, back into the rough. Long story short, we know he parred. Hence the playoff. I cashed out the ticket right before Fleetwood was going to tee off on 18. With also the thought is, even if he does par this hole, that they're going to go to a playoff. And again, I was just a little worried the way that Fleetwood was playing. And I think he was gaining like 7, 8 strokes with a putter, putting the lights out, which typically that's where Tommy Fleetwood has struggled. And long story short, I kind of even stated to my significant other that I cashed the ticket in. And that pretty much guarantees that Nick Taylor will win this thing. And of course he did. And what amazing. I mean, I also tweeted that I felt pretty bad for Tommy, right? Fairway Jesus. I think he's a huge fan favorite, one of mine. And that he almost, you know, was going to get his first win on the PGA Tour. But, you know, it was kind of a hard one. And then also what I thought was kind of interesting, and maybe it was finally stated on Sunday, but nobody brought up that Nick Taylor, of course, also, right, gave Scotty Scheffler a run at the Waste Management. We've seen him do this, and then also outduel Phil Mickelson back at Pebble Beach, where Phil won like 6 times the AT&T Pro-Am in some very difficult conditions on the back nine. And so it wasn't where I was just taking guesses. I know that Nick Taylor had the game. It was what was probably hard for a lot of people to get on him from a DFS perspective or a betting, was that he missed like 2 or 3 cuts before this event and didn't really show a whole lot of form since the Waste Management. But anyways, hopefully you got in on that win, hopefully from a DFS side and also from the betting side. And then, of course, I've got to bring up, the thing that was hitting Twitter all day long, which I didn't see this till I saw Twitter, was, of course, Adam Hadwin, came out to spray him with champagne, his, Canadian buddy, and because he didn't have his lanyard on, and also you see wearing jeans, the security guard just literally went all Lawrence Taylor on him and just lined him up and just put him down. And of course, it was pretty humorous. And then there was tweets from Hadwin's wife and everyone, and it was a great chuckle. But the security guard here must just felt completely stupid after he found out who it was. All right, real quick, just look at some stroke gain data. Of course, the guys that UC starred were my picks from a DFS side: Nick Taylor, Fleetwood Hatton. So I always give myself an A. If you literally pick the top 3 guys, you're going to be really good. And then if you're curious from a DFS perspective, I hit a nice little showdown finale yesterday, but I only put 5 teams into the large game just because I mentioned I was going to be traveling. And of course, the time that I don't put a lot of stock in is when I pretty much had one of my better DFS selections. So not only did I have him, of course, I picked Aaron Rye, I had Eric Cole, Justin Rose. I kind of said something about Justin Rose was kind of sitting there in my mind that he was going to do well. I also picked Corey Connors, who at one time looked like, same with Rory, who I skipped over, but going into Sunday looked like he would have a good opportunity to win. CT Pan. Another thing they didn't mention a lot was at the Olympics, if you watched any of that, of course, it went to like, 6-7 man playoff for the bronze. And I remember watching it all the way up to those guys teed off, and it was like, whatever it was, 3, 4, or 5 in the morning, Eastern time. And I said, well, it's the bronze. I don't really care. And also, I don't know, Morikawa will win or Rory should win this. And CT Pan came out and won that and is a bronze medal winner. Of course, that's when Sabatini went nuts on Sunday and took the silver. It was just pretty crazy that what CT Pan was doing. And also, they hung a number out there, I think with like 6 holes to go for him, at like 225 to 1. I put a few bucks on that, probably not too far off when I cashed out the Nick Taylor one. But of course, that didn't come. But I mean, came to 16 under, had 2 really good opportunities to make birdies also. So anyways, that's probably enough on the recap of the RBC. One of the best finishes we've had in golf in a while. And like I said, from a tournament that was kind of for the first couple of days, and then it really, of course, amped up there on Sunday. And then last, I didn't get to touch on this. So, I was putting the show together, getting it out on Monday, and then literally this news breaks, right, that everybody's been talking about. So I'm definitely a little late to the game, but I didn't get to share my thoughts, if you care, on the, of course, the PGA Tour, the DP World Tour merging with the PIF, the LIV, whatever's the Public Investment Fund. I'm going to make this pretty quick. I mean, of course, what we saw is everybody has a price, and I think it was crazy shocking that Jay Monahan took that holy righteous side of trying to keep his guys on the tour, not to go defect to the LIV. But honestly, if you look at the PIF and that whatever Yadmir Yusin or whatever his name is that runs that thing, the guy's a genius. I mean, from a business perspective, this guy knew exactly how to get the PGA Tour on his side and with him. And honestly, the way I look at it, I don't know what the investment comparative is, but they're going to be the majority owner, at least in the new commercially held whatever tour that it's going to be. And why I think it actually happened was that with the lawsuits that were coming, both sides were going to have to open their books. And with the PGA Tour having, of course, their nonprofit, non-taxable status, that if those books were open, it could be scrutinized and maybe they would lose that, or even get the IRS get some penalties. And that might still happen, because it's very crazy that the PGA Tour all of a sudden just did an about face and when they had open books. And then, of course, on the PIF fund, if they had to open their books, I'm sure there's things that they didn't want to show either. So I think that's why they flew together, got together in London, went and played golf, had lunch, became best friends, and said, hey, neither of us want this to go to court, and we need to figure this out. Also, the PGA Tour was bleeding, I believe, hemorrhaging money to try to keep up these elevated events, the lawsuits. So that was probably another side on why. I mean, there was a lot of business sides, but it is what it is. We'll see how this all shakes out in the new year. My kind of thoughts off the top is that they're going to create some kind of premier league that's globally goes around and plays, which will be kind of sad. And then I think, that'd be like the top 50 players. And then the rest will be playing on more of the what we know as the PGA Tour, kind of, giving back to the communities. Hence, they're keeping both of these entities, or the new identity entity, and then the one that we know as the charitable sponsors. And so we'll see how it's all going to shake out. It's going to be very interesting. Of course, then all the players that defected. Of course, I had Cam Smith on the front, which I think he's a great fit for this course that's coming up. Hence why he's there. But, some of these guys will get, brought back into the fold. Your DJs, your Koepkas, your Cam Smiths. I don't know how Phil Mickelson will fit into that. Of course, Greg Norman's gone. And back to like the live, that Yasmir, whatever, the guy's a genius because he's literally just used things as like pawns. And Jay Monahan, as far as I'm concerned, will be gone not too longer after they get this thing all figured out. As the CEO of the new one, it wouldn't shock me that they place somebody again from that PIF fund to kind of manage this premier global. But they did enough disruption, and I see this in business. He had a perfect plan to disrupt the PGA Tour enough that they had to bring him in. And it was pretty much the same thing from a soccer perspective, tennis, F1, so Formula. This isn't the first time they've done this. And literally, they could take this model to any sport they wanted with the war chest and dollars they have. Nobody compete against. And I don't know. We'll see how many more sports possibly that we know could be taken over. That is it. That's my thoughts on that. Get off my soapbox. Okay, let's talk about why we're here. Now, let's talk about the 123rd U.S. Open. Of course, it's being played at the Los Angeles Country Club. It's been forever that they even had a U.S. Open in L.A. because of traffic and hotels and all that. So a lot of the guys hopefully are staying at the Beverly Hills Hotel because this is literally located right downtown in the center of everything. And if you've ever been in that area, you know that it's pretty much impossible to even drive. 10 minutes could take 2 hours. So that's going to be a little interesting. But I've heard that they've worked on the infrastructure and made it so that these guys can, make their tee times and get there. Of course, it opened back in 1927. And the last thing that it kind of hosted of any note was the Walker Cup in 2017, which had, like Matt McNeely, Scotty Scheffler. I'm going to forget all the guys, but Morikawa, quite a few of the California guys played in that and won that Walker Cup. So, and all these guys have little different levels of experience on this course. I tweeted out a while back when Danny McCarthy almost won the Memorial that he said he's played here 4 to 5 times, even since the Reno. And I bet him, I think 151, which his odds have dropped down. I think they're around 120 or something like that now. But just side note, all these guys, not all of them, but some of them do have some experience here. It is a crazy tough track, which we expect for the U.S. Open, and we're going to get into this in detail. But all you need to see right off the bat when I saw this was a par 70 playing at over 7,400 yards. It is going to be a beast. And then what's really unique, and I did not know this, was that, you've got, of course, the Bermuda fairways, and then you got this crazy rough, which if you go on Twitter, you're going to see a lot of these guys. I think it was Alan Shipnuck put out a tweet that, dropping the balls and they're just disappearing. And then, dropping one on the collar, watching these things roll forever. So you've got crazy fast, firm greens. You've got some really gnarly Bermuda rough, which, again, I always say if your Bermuda rough is probably the hardest to play out of. And then what was unique to me, and I did not know, was I was estimating or guessing that the greens would be POA, hence California. And that is not the case. They are going to be bent grass greens. So, we've seen a bit of that here recently, the PGA, Charles Schwab, and stuff like that. So, do have some data on that side. Right now, what I got the player field at is 150 players, and typically that is cut down to T60 and ties for the U.S. Open. If you go back and look at the last few U.S. Opens, historical cut line has fallen somewhere around +4 to +7. I think that should be pretty similar to here. And then, of course, last year with Fitzy making that magical 9-iron shot out of the sand bunker to stick it within, I don't know what it was, 10, 15 feet. And it looked like he was going to have a tough time to get out and hit probably one of the greatest shots we've seen, at least to win at the U.S. Open history. That was at Brookline, Massachusetts, the country club. Then the year before that, right, you had Rahm at Torrey Pines making those crazy long putts on the South Course. You had the Bryson, who took down Winged Foot with, just bomb and gouge and not worried about the crazy rough. And also you had Matthew Wolff right there with him, shot 6 under. And then, of course, you had Gary Woodland, a little bit out of nowhere, that, one of the greatest ball strikers, but typically would struggle with the putter and the chipper. But it all came together for him at Pebble Beach. And then a very probably good comp course, but it's been so long ago, is when Koepka won at Shinnecock Hills. If you look at just kind of the visuals of that course, I call it kind of the Australian linksy kind of course, that there's a few of them that I'll name, if your idea. But the problem is we don't have a ton of like over and over recent data against those courses. And that was what, 2015, I think? Might be off a little bit on that. Maybe 2018, I think, is when Koepka won at Shinnecock. Coming from the superintendent's sheets that we get, we didn't get a ton of information because technically this is not a PGA event, it's a USGA event, but we did get a little bit. But you can walk through this course, and I'll go over that when we get into it. But from what I see, there's some like crazy large greens, like over 8,000 square feet, which average square foot for a green on the PGA Tour is around 5,000. And then I saw some quite a bit smaller. So I'm leaning that these greens are going to be larger than average, but they are some crazy elevated greens. Everything's trying to run the ball off the green, crazy slope. I mean, it is going to be very tough, even when you're on the greens, to make putts. That's how I see right now. And then the sand is crazy. Tons and tons of some of the largest sand bunkers you ever see, like 48 yards big. They're deep, and they're in the fairway. They put them like 100 yards in front of the green, so that messes with you visually. Some of the bunkers look like they're right around the green, but actually they're set in some. So if you've ever seen that, where it visually looks like the green's surrounded by sand from the distance, but you get up there and you're like, oh, I didn't know I had 30-40 yards of room between. And then, like I said, large fairways. So that but the problem is these large fairways are very pitched and sloped, and so I noticed quite a few of them will pitch you towards like the bunkers, or these like gorges / they're called barrancas. We'll get into that. There's no water on this course that I saw, so 0 water hazards. And then right now what we got is the stimp meters running at 13. Now, like I said, it's been very dry in the Midwest. We finally just got a little rain, which you probably saw in Toronto over the weekend. But, I would think over in California it's going to be pretty firm and fast. So that 13 could get up to 13 and a half. But I don't know how much more they can allow it, because like I said, what I see is quite a bit of slope and undulation in these greens. What you're going to hear about a ton from the guys, and right now we're just starting to get some feedback from the guys doing practice rounds, is that, again, this 4-inch Bermuda rough is going to be just crazy. If you hit it in there on the fairway, it is, the odds you are not probably going to be going for the green. You might try to get it close, but just get it back into the fairway. I already talked about the firm, fast, lightning greens. A lot of pine trees line this place. Even you'll see some palm trees, but still quite a few pine trees. We talked about the elevated greens. And then they got this thing, this like river gorge is what's called a barranca, that actually runs along the fairway or even in front of the greens. That comes into effect on 8 holes. There, from what I can see, there's no water in it. At one time there was, but it's like a dried out, like I said, river winding gorge out through the course. Talked about the fairway bunkers and about the fairways, doing a lot of pitch. And there's quite a bit of elevation here too, from sometimes you're teeing down where like you're going down 30 to 50 feet, or you're going up. So some blind shots, also quite a few blind shots actually, that we'll go through when we do the course. Kind of a side note, this is the first US Open with Bermuda rough since the 2005 US Open at Pinehurst. I think Europeans will be pretty comfortable and Australians will be pretty comfortable on this style of track. We saw that at Kiel Island when Phil Mickelson won the PGA Championship. You got Chambers Bay that hosted a US Open, Shinnecock Hills, Whistling Straits that hosted, of course, the Ryder Cup not too long ago, the PGA, even Congaree Golf Club that had the Palmetto, which the field is pretty weak, of course. I think Hatton was in it. Of course, Garrick Higo came out and won that one. A little bit, it was like his first PGA Tour event. But anyways, if you haven't seen the course visually, if you know those tracks, a lot of the visual cues look very similar. And then some other unique things is you probably maybe even seen this on Twitter. If not, there is 2 par 3s. There's actually 5 par 3s, but there's 2 or 3 of them actually that are almost 300 yards in length. And that is very rare for any PGA event, of course, even a US Open, but we'll kind of look at those a little bit because One of them, you're actually shooting downhill, probably takes 20, 30 feet off or yards off that total. And then lastly, I said it is a par 70. And if you want to know the breakdown, if I forget, there is 5 par 3s, 3 of them over 225. And then there is just 3 par 5s and then 11 par 4s. And also it's crazy, and we'll get into this. Let's go see this. We'll get on to par 3, but let's just kind of go through this. First thing I'll tell you is go to usopen.com, go to the course, and you can literally, this is where I grabbed this from, read the notes and go hole by hole, and they do a great job laying out hole by hole. If you need more information on, maybe the guys that you want to target, I think I've got all that wrapped up for you. But again, I recommend it if you want a better understanding. But funny enough, they start you out with a par 5, 590. We'll say the easiest this course is going to get. So a birdie opportunity right off the bat. And it's also stating since Aaron Hills is the first, opening par 5. But typically, as a golfer, if you played it, that is perfect because you get to hit a lot of different clubs. It's great for a warm up. But the hope is that you get that birdie right off the bat, because the next one's a 497 par 4. And it's tough. It's a tough hole. Then you're going to go to number 3, kind of, we'll say similar, but you can also see maybe a little tighter, a little pitchy, a 419 par 4. And then here comes one of those par 3s at 228. And this is the one I was talking about that you're actually teeing up higher, so 30 feet above. So we'll take some of that yardage off. And then a lot of these par 3s, because they're so long, you literally have to gauge like a links course that you cannot land it on the green. It will not stay. So you need to either know where you're going to position it, landing it short and letting it roll up is what a couple of those almost 300-yard par 3s you're going to need to do. Another one here, 480-yard par 4. And it's kind of funny. The palm trees actually is right where the green is. I just thought that was kind of interesting. And then you've got a gettable, drivable par 4, number 6 at 330 yards. But what this thing does is actually it kind of goes to the right. So there's like a tree over here. You got to shoot it over. And then there's open area to the left. That's where I see a lot of the guys will be going. But again, a little bit of a blind shot. Here's one of those crazy par 3s. I told you 284 yards. And you can see a lot of trouble you can get in. And then there's the next par 5, another hopefully birdie opportunity that at 537, which it looks like you are driving. Again, the fairway is above you. And then here's kind of just, we'll call it a normal par 3 at 171 yards, but it is also one of the narrowest greens. So it's really long, but very narrow. As you can see, 43 yards in width. So even at 171 yards, and it's, protected by those very deep bunkers. And then you got a par 4, 409, where what this is showing here is that, again, I told you that literally the fairway just pitches and is going to pitch you off into the rough. So you got to get it up way up on the right. So it kind of makes you like, well, either you got to kind of aim at the bunkers and hit a draw, or you got to fade it, which a lot of those guys do, back into there, and hopefully it holds. And then here's this crazy number 11, which again, I think was on Twitter, almost 300 yards long, but there is an elevation drop of 40 feet. So again, that should take off, I don't know, about 20 yards, we'll say, depending on the weather. And then again, a shorter par 4, 380, number 12. The problem is literally, you can see this, you're 50 feet below and you're driving the ball into a blind fairway. You just got this big hill. So again, pretty unique. Number 13, a pretty tough par 4 at 507 yards. And then this is a big, deep valley. That's what this is showing here. Tee shot crosses a big, deep valley. And number 14, par 5, 623 yards. It's going to be, a 3-shot to get to the green. So you're definitely probably not going to be going that in 2, very rarely. This is kind of unique. So then they got this par 3 right now. It's at 124 yards. But literally they're saying they could set it up to be an 80-yard par 3 or 145. And this green, again, is, very well protected, elevated. And so, yeah, it's good that you have the ability to fly something very high to land on this. 16, the longest par 4 on the course. So now, if you look at the last 3 holes, not too far off what we just saw, but like the snake pit, all those, the last 3 holes are just brutal. So 542-yard par 4, longest par 4 on the golf course. And then now we look at 17, which I think is going to be the toughest hole. Number 1 handicap. You can see how tight this is. Good thing is a lot of these guys faded off the tee, but that's 520 yards. And then the last hole's no gimme either at 500 yards. And again, you could see kind of going up and quite a bit of woods on your right and a ton of sand. So Anyways, again, I just want to give you a quick breakdown. I had to do this because I didn't get a scorecard from the PGA or anything like that. So I needed to kind of break down and try to figure out all the inner workings. So thought I'd share it with you guys too. So with all that said, the player profile that I'm going to be going with on my large custom stat models is ball striking number one. You could probably get a good sense of that when you see the distances. Approach is definitely going to be needed. Now, where I'm a little hesitant with that is it's probably not going to be the usual of, the really small greens, easy, just hit the fairway, but you really got to be good with the irons. I mean, approach is definitely going to be needed as always is, but I think these greens are a little bigger and there's so many other things to worry about on this course that when you see how I kind of weighted this, it's not going to be as heavy as usual. Actually, I went with off the tee, but really that which combines distance and fairways, you're definitely going to need to be straight and long to be able to effective on this. I think around the green and sand saves, hence why you saw Cam Smith on my cover, I think is going to be huge because a lot of these greens, these par threes that are so long, you're going to really need a good around the green and also be good out of the sand. Not that putting is, this low, you're going to need to be really good at putting, but all these other things even give you a chance to make a putt for par or birdie. All that's got to happen before. And then, the proxy of the pins, we don't have past historical showing, but everything that I see kind of breaking down the yardage, you're going to have a lot of shots, 200 plus and 175 to 200. And then I wanted to just, because it's so unique, there's those 3 par threes at 225 yards. So just curious. And then bogey avoidance. In the large model, I didn't add this, but I'm going to use it in my picks. Not looking so much at the birdies, but when I show my picks, bogey avoidance will be one of the key things we look at. All right, so I did this last year for the U.S. Open. I'll do it again. I don't know. There's maybe something to it, but of course, total strokes gained in the past 5 U.S. Opens. If you're interested, of course, Xander makes total sense. Of course, he's also a California kid and from the area, but you can see over and over U.S. Opens he's had some of the best finishes without a win. Louis Oosthuizen, not sure why, but Fantasy National pulled in quite a few of the live guys that are actually not playing, so Louis be one of them. DJ, of course, also has had a lot of success in the U.S. Opens. You got Rory, of course, John Rahm, who won at Torrey Pines. You got Koepka, as I mentioned, who won at Shinnecock. And I think before that, Aaron Hills, too, but had a second in 2019. Hideki's actually someone I'm kind of interested in if all works well, and I'll get into why when I do the betting. Fitzpatrick, of course, who won last year. Colin Morikawa, which, he's had good showings, a 4th and a 5th. And, of course, his locals. Also was on that Walker Cup, as I mentioned, played here. But, man, his game, for me, has been a little sideways. You had DeChambeau, who showed up at the PGA Championship, who won, of course, at Wingfoot, as I mentioned. Gary Woodland had the win at Pebble Beach. And then you got Patrick Reed, who is playing and also has, that kind of unique hands around the green. Scotty Scheffler, from a modeling perspective, which you could probably imagine, just kind of stands out over everything I did. Then you got Patrick Cantlay, also from California, and then Adam Scott, who's had some good finishes over and over at the U.S. Open. Okay, so we take that custom stat model, and as always, I start out with recent form. And what we're looking at here is the past 24 rounds of golf or 6 tournaments with no filters turned on. And then if you want to see the weighting, it is below here, but I'll go over it real quick. Ball striking at 15%. See, approaches at 20. That's quite a bit, not quite a bit, but less than I usually do, because I really believe off the tee is going to be a necessity here. Around the green is going to be a necessity, and sand saves. Very rare that I put that much weighting around the green and sand saves and putting. So 30% is all around the green and on the green. Then you got those 2 proxies at 5 that I talked about. Oh, I'm sorry, the par 3 at 225 plus at 5. And then the 2 proxies also at 5. If you pump that in and click my rank, and number 1, funny enough, comes up Terrell Hatton, which of course had an amazing Sunday yesterday at the RBC Canadian Open, which I think he shot 8 under and also made me a few dollars in the showdown finale. So, I think he's interesting. You got Victor Hovland coming off the win at the Memorial. Scotty Scheffler, of course, with a couple wins. You got Rory, who again had a falter on Sunday. Patrick Cantlay just been really steady over the past few months. You got Fleetwood, who I'm interested in, also has shown up. I think came in second. What was last year or the year before in the U.S. Open? Justin Rose, Tony Finau, Ricky Fowler, Corey Connors, John Rahm, Spieth, Sanders, Siwoo Kim, and Hideki to round out your top 15 against my model under recent form. And then, as always, if you want to do really recent form, This is looking over the last 3 tournaments, 12 rounds. Again, all same stroke gain analysis and weightings. And Hovland actually comes to number 1. Scheffler, Rory, Rahm, Koepka. Mito Pura, that one's you got to be a little worried about, right? Because, I mean, we have, I think he played, the Masters and the PGA. So a little bit of data new, but I mean, I'm not saying it's terrible. I'm just saying anytime I see a live guy, you got to be a little cautious because the data could be a little bit. Mito would be probably one of the best we'd have on live. Austin Eckroat, who's been playing really good golf. Xander. Shane Lowry's still struggling, so it's kind of interesting to see him in there. Seb Straka, Wyndham Clark, Ricky Fowler, Gary Woodland, Siwoo Kim, and Justin Rose. Again, round out your top 15 guys over the past 3 tournaments. Okay, the next thing that I wanted to look at, and I did this last year because rough is always such a factor at the U.S. Open. Who's actually had the best ball striking when playing in high rough, right? So this, again, is 3.5, 4-inch rough. And again, against my model, and all I do is pretty much turn on the high rough filter on Fantasy National, and then we're filtering by just ball striking. So I just want to call that out. Over the past 6 tournaments, 24 rounds when playing in tough rough. So hence the Bay Hills, the Memorials. I think even Charles Schwab actually had some pretty high rough, if I remember correctly. So you got Scotty Scheffler, number 1. Patrick Cantlay, Rory, Luke List, Corey Connors, Joaquin Niemann, one of your live players. Tony Finau, Morikawa, Homa, Hatton, Emiliano Grillo, of course, who won the Charles Schwab here recently. Mito Pura, Tom Kim, Sungjae M, and Russ Henley are your top 15 ball strikers when we have deep rough. And then also I wanted to look around the green. Now, a couple of these guys are not in the U.S. Open. Of course, there was a bunch of Twitter stuff about Taylor Gooch not making it. You know, a lot of the live supporters boo-hooing about that because he had those back-to-back wins on the live. But what do you do with that? And then HV3 also, who had a win on the live tour. But neither of these guys are in the field. So your number 1 out the bat is Jordan Spieth. Russ Henley, Scotty Scheffler, Fleetwood, Jason Day, Kevin Streelman, Siwoo Kim, Patrick Rogers, Cam Smith, Patrick Reed, Justin Thomas, Nick Taylor, of course, your winner at the RBC here, and then Matty Kuchar are your top 15 guys around the green in the thick rough. And it is definitely going to be a needed asset in this upcoming event. All right, the next thing I want to look at is Ironman. And I told you guys I changed this a little where I'm combining the 3 key stroke gain categories with the irons. So I'm looking at approach overall. That's all yardages when you're hitting irons at 35%. That proximity 175 to 200 at 30%. And then that proximity 200 plus at 35%. I believe that should be a little more of the shots will come outside of 200. And then the next would be 175, 200. And also I'm sure there's going to be that 100 in because, again, of the distances. But I'm not so worried about as much as the guys that could do that. What these numbers will pull out for me is some of the best ball strikers we have in the field. And of course it does with number 1, Scotty Scheffler, John Rahm, Victor Hovland, Hideki. I mean, all those guys, elite ball strikers. You got JR, Rory, Shane, Gary Woodland, Morikawa, Finau, Joaquin Niemann, Seabez, who is showing here that is not in the field. I did not even verify that, but I'm pretty sure that must be correct. From the DP World Tour, Romain Lagask, I think you pronounce that. Brooks Koepka and Wyndham Clark are your top 15 best approach guys when you take into factor these 2 longer proximities. And then I have to do this one too, again, because one unique thing, again, if you're building teams with certain key assets now in a U.S. Open or any major, you need these guys to have all the key assets. But, you know, they all are PGA pros, right? They all have quite a bit of talent. But if you just train, you know, I want to pull out the best drivers of the golf ball that hit, you know, longest with the fairways, that's these guys right here. And you'll notice I did it with driving distance 50%, fairways gain 50%. Number 1, Scotty Scheffler, Patrick Cantlay, Brent Grant, which if you watched a bit of the RBC Canadian Open, you got to see quite a bit of coverage him on Sunday. Well, I should say on PGA Live because he played a little earlier. But he hits a crazy long ball, but he hits quite a bit of fade. Almost, I could call it a slice. Like his ball moves from left to right, probably on average like 30, 25 yards. Which is kind of unique, but he's a really good ball striker, just not good around the greens and the putter. Gary Woodland, not too far off on that same exact sample. I mean, literally, you could probably, from a DFS perspective, play Brent Grant, and you're probably getting a lot cheaper player than Gary Woodland. And I'd say they're very similar on what they do. You got Sammy Stevens, Shane Lowry, Seb Straka, Victor Hovland, Hayden Buckley, Ross Fisher, Tommy Fleetwood, Paul Barjon, Austin Eckroat, Davis Riley, Michael Kim, and Vincent Norman. So in short, these are the guys that are bombing it off the tee, but also hitting a lot of fairways. All right, so I did this for the Memorial, and I thought I'd bring it back because hey, we're going to be playing a course that has a lot of distance, very difficult, but with crazy rough. And so what I did here is that I pulled out the API this year earlier, which played very difficult, crazy firm and fast, everything that this course should play like, and same with the Memorial. And I just pulled those two tournaments in, so it's very recent form. And again, against my model. And I just wanted to see who popped up. And of course, Victor Hovland won the Memorial. Scotty Scheffler, who was won the API. You got Max Homa, Jordan Spieth, Siwoo Kim, Tony Finau, Rory, Patrick Cantlay, Jason Kokrak, who is not in the field, another live guy pops up there. Matthew Fitzpatrick, Aaron Wise, who's been in just a terrible funk. Martin Keimer is only really in this field because he won the U.S. Open. I believe it was at Pinehurst. It's been a while, though, but that was, like I said, I mentioned, that's the last one that had a lot of Bermuda. Terrell Hatton, who showed up at the API, actually his only win on the PGA Tour, but this is just pulling in the recent one this year. Kyle Morikawa, and then Andrew Putnam, who I believe, if I remember right, had a good run at the Memorial and must have did something at the API. But is kind of an interesting play here. Doesn't have the distance off the tee, but man, is a guy got a great short game and it's been pretty good with the irons, as you see here, rated at 6 on these two events. And then I just pulled this up, which I don't really think this, honestly, from my own perspective, has a lot to do with anything because it's not POA. The only time that if it was POA greens and these guys that grew up in California or went to college in California played a lot on POA, as I mentioned with like Max Homa, I think it is definitely an advantage of some level. But with this being bent greens and Bermuda everywhere, honestly, I think these guys really have nothing. But I still did it because I like to do for the majors, the guys that are local to the area. Of course, we already know Patrick Cantlay is California. Ricky was born in California, lives in Jupiter now and has for a while. Of course, Xander, LA kid. Of course, you got Max Homa, California Bear, and Colin Morikawa, both Cal Bears. You had Patrick Rogers, who came from Stanford. Sahith went to Pepperdine, grew up in California. Kind of an interesting thought about that one. Great scrambler. The putter kind of let him down, but typically on bent, he will show up. And then you got Phil Mickelson, of course, right, who won the PGA Championship at Q. I mentioned, also from California, and trying to get the last major he needs, which is the U.S. Open, to complete the Grand Slam over his career. All right, so now the betting card, and again, I always mention this is with a focus a little more on the guys with higher odds. Now, totally different than last week because that field had, 4 or 5 guys we had to get by, and if you did, it kind of opened up the whole field the way I look at it. This one, the odds in a major that it's going to be one of the top dogs that's going to win this thing, like a Scotty Scheffler. But these are the guys with higher odds that I'm interested in. We'll go through real quick. Of course, Tommy Fleetwood, I mentioned in the U.S. Opens, he showed up, grinds out like a Xander Schauffele. Typically, he'll get you a top 5. But of course, he just had one of his best putting experiences that I've seen that I can remember, also on bent greens. So I bet Tommy at 40-1. And all these are on DraftKings Sportsbooks if you're interested where these odds came from. Hideki was like my last minute call, but the more and more I sat and thought about it, the guy is an elite ball striker. He's won the Masters on bent. Typically, we see him on fast greens. For whatever reason, he typically putts well, right? Usually he's not a good putter, but we have seen it pop up. And then his around a green game and sand game is, I think, exemplary. So I was very interested. Literally, the Cam Davis call is because I think Australians are going to do well here. Just how much sand. Of course, Cam Davis is typically an elite ball striker, but his, year has been either, top 10 or miscut, top 10, miscut, top 10. So who knows how that's all going to fall out, but I put a bet in at 150-1. Max Homa, I bet a while ago, as probably a few people did. Again, funny enough, with the brain thought that these were going to be POA greens, because I do feel like when Max is on POA, that's when he's got his best chance to win a tournament. I got him at 35-1 a while ago. He probably could have got him higher than that even before. But right now he's going off at 28-1. And honestly, I mean, not that I don't think Max can't make the cut in, maybe top 20, but I'm not feeling that he'll win this with kind of the game that I've been seeing out of Max over the last, couple months. JT, this is purely because whenever JT is over 30-1, I bet him. And again, not the greatest form that he's been in, right? He hasn't really done a whole lot since his PGA victory at Southern Hills, but at 50-1 with his short game, he's got the distance. Great irons. He just needs that putter to just be neutral or come alive a little bit. Denny McCarthy, I mentioned, I tweeted this out. I bet him at 150-1 after his good run at the Memorial. And also he stated that, he's very comfortable on this course. He's played it 5 or 6 times. since the Reno. And also, he's got a great short game. You know, the distance off the tee is not there, but his irons have really picked up. He's one of the best putters on tour. Also, very good around the green. So, something I think you're going to need. And you can see that over here with the putting, but off the tee just doesn't have the distance. DJ's game's kind of been back and forth, right? I mean, of course, we don't get to see him a lot with the LIV, but I mean, his history at the U.S. Opens are just crazy. So, just on that, I thought 35-1 is a pretty good bet. The first guy I actually pulled the trigger on, and you guys know I'm a bit of a Cam Smith slappy. We also know his game is, I think it's been getting better and better. It's not a good Masters, better PGA. He's had better results on the LIV, but him being Australian and having one of the best short games I've ever seen, he's got distance off the tee. It's just, can he keep it in the fairway? But these are larger fairways, so he's got some room, but if he gets in a rough like anybody else, it's going to be trouble. And then the Brent Grant was purely a top 10. Just because of his unique skill set. I got him 80-1. So 2,000-1 to win it. No way, not what I was thinking. But 80-1 that he could top 10. I thought I'd take a piece of that. And then my long shot, Taylor Montgomery. This is purely what this guy also, a lot like Cam Smith, but Cam Smith's got a better game. But around the green and putting is ridiculous. The putter specifically. And then just, have a week with the irons, and the driver's got distance. It just doesn't hit a lot of fairways, so that could be a problem. But again, that is my super long shot. That at 250-1, I put a few bucks on it. We'll see how that works out. I don't know if I'll put a bet in like on a Scotty Scheffler or someone at 7-1, 10-1. I told you guys I've already had a pretty nice, just my last hitting Griot and Nick Taylor, and there was somebody else pretty recently. It was a very rough betting beginning of the year, as it probably was for a lot of people, unless you just make one bet on, two bets, Scheffler and Rahm every time, and put a lot of money on them, then, you'd be pretty happy. But on the good side, we have had some longer shots. It's also been some of the events. But this one, like I said, these are guys that could possibly do it, but it wouldn't shock me if a Rahm or a Scheffler ends up pulling this thing out. Or even Xander, I think is a good bet, but I know his odds they're less than 20-1. So no thank you on that. Okay, with that said, that is going to wrap up my preview show and a little bit on the betting side. I appreciate you get your time spending. I will work on what I'm doing from the pick side, hopefully get that out. And then, of course, I'll be announcing the winners on Wednesday on the Before the Lock show. So stay tuned for that. And if you've not told me who you think is going to win the U.S. Open to get in my giveaway, please do that. Again, we're trying to get to the 2,000 mark for subscribers. That'd be awesome. I appreciate all the positive feedback you guys give me. And as I've always stated, it keeps me doing what I do. And if you'd always do me the honor, click that like button and check out the pick show tomorrow. And I'll talk to you guys later. Have a great Monday.